Hi, folks. Got an absolutely amazing guest here today who's here to talk about a very serious case. His name is Tony Thompson. He's a former police officer and superintendent, and we're going to be discussing the case of Clive Freeman. Lovely to have you here, Tony. And obviously, people may not know or they may not have heard of the case of Clive Freeman, although we've talked about him before on this channel. Maybe you can give us some background on the case.
Yes, thanks, Liam, for inviting me back. Yes, well, we've made some progress since I last spoke to you. But if I give you a quick overview for people who aren't aware of Clive Freeman, Clive Freeman's probably the longest serving prisoner who's been proclaiming his innocence in British jail at the moment. He was arrested in Australia in 1988 for an offence of murder and arson in a London flat, and was sentenced at the Old Bailey at the Central Criminal Court in May 1989 to a term of imprisonment. He got life imprisonment for murder, 5 years for arson. I'll explain a little bit about the case in a moment, but he was given a minimum term of 13 years at the time when he was convicted, and that was increased to 15 years. Now, that tariff has long expired, and he's now probably, say, the longest serving one. He's in his 38th year of prison. He is 82 years old. He's got quite severe prostate cancer, and he's got mobility issues. So he's not a well man, and he's been here a long time. And all the evidence that I've been able to uncover suggests that there was no crime of murder at all. And in fact, I'm confident, reasonably confident, that when his case goes to the Court of Appeal, because that's where it's now going, his convictions will be quashed, and he'll be known as the man who spent some 38 years in prison for a crime that never was. But going back to the actual allegation from the Crown back in the day, it was billed in the media at the time as one of the most extraordinary murder trials ever to be heard at the Old Bailey. And it was suggested that, in fact, he was convicted, of course, that he'd lured a homeless man off the streets, murdered him in a flat by a technique known only to members of the special forces, so it didn't leave any marks, set fire to the body with the intention that the body would be regarded as his, and then he would then claim on a policy of insurance that he'd taken out, and his family, and ultimately he would benefit. And he then left the country, allegedly fled to Australia, where he was arrested and brought back to the UK, charged and convicted. But when you actually unravel all the different facts, and it's quite complicated, first of all, there was no murder, or the evidence suggests from all the experts over the years, long before I got involved, indicates that the man died from, there was a death, sadly, but it looks as though the man died from a combination of prescription medicine and alcohol, plus his own poor health. So it's a long, tortuous story when you look at it, but Clive's still in prison, maintained his innocence from the very time he was first interviewed in Australia, and remains in prison now. But the good news is,
And can I, oh, before we get to the good news, can I just say that had he admitted his guilt throughout, how many years ago would he been let out?
if he'd admitted his guilt, he would have been out 20, 25 years ago. He would have been on parole and out on license, and doing whatever he wanted to do. But he insisted right from the start he didn't commit the crime, and he's still in prison. Now, the parole board, who have been looking at his case over the years, have got what they call a parole board dossier, which basically is his history prior to going into prison, prior to conviction, and during. He's been a model prisoner. I mean, I've got documents going back 20 odd years from the governor of one of the prisons he was serving in, saying he was a model prisoner, and he should be out of prison. But because he's been insisting he's innocent, and he won't go on any of the approved courses, the parole board are saying that, well, we can't assess his risk, therefore his risk is unmanageable, therefore he cannot be released. That said, Clive has said and insists to the very day today that he will not leave prison until he is exonerated, and that pathway is via the Court of Appeal.
So, I mean, that shows what an amazing character he is, because even though he didn't commit the crime, he could have just said, I did it, and he would have been home and he would have seen his family because he's lost so many relatives and friends over the years, hasn't he?
He has. I think Clive said to me the other day, it's about 13 or 14 members of his family. He made a
Oh, it's
promise
terrible.
to his wife back in 1999 that he would only leave prison when he was exonerated. He said, how can I go back to Africa where his family are in former Rhodesia in Zimbabwe and in South Africa with the stigma of being a convicted killer. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I didn't do the crime. I'm doing the time, but I didn't do the crime. And I will leave when I'm exonerated. Now, applications have gone into the Criminal Cases Review Commission going back to 2000. And I picked this up back in early 2023 when I started looking at it, and it became clear to me that this did not look right at all, and the evidence.
Sorry to interrupt. Why did you first get attracted to it, and how were you informed about the case?
I first met Clive in early 2023. The reason I got involved is I'm a member of the Veterans Advisory and Pensions
Mhm.
Committee for South West England, and a bit of a mouthful, but we support it's a Ministry of Defence voluntary appointment, and I'm now in my fourth year.
Mhm.
And I have been going to the prison where Clive is, Ley Hill in Gloucester, to support and meet prison veterans. Clive's a veteran, not of the UK forces, but from the Rhodesian military, and that's where I first met him. And we were introduced. Had to build up a bit of trust and confidence. As soon as I said was a former police superintendent, he he reacted and thought, "I don't trust the UK police
Yeah.
at all." I
Mhm.
understand that, I get that, but now over time we've built up trust and confidence, and that's mutual in terms of
Mhm.
I and me understanding his situation and he understanding I'm trying to help him.
Mhm.
And then I took over his application, which in fact is his sixth application to the Criminal
Yeah.
Cases Review Commission, which went in just over 2 years ago, 1st of August 2023. And on the 8th of sorry, 8th of August this year, we had a successful result from the Criminal Cases Review Commission, where they said, at long last, they've referred the case to the Court of Appeal. So that's the next
Why?
step.
Because he'd had five previous attempts at this. What was the difference in the sixth one? Because apparently it's really difficult to get these things overturned, isn't it? Or
It
looked
is very
at.
difficult. I mean, a lot of people have done quite a bit of work. I think Clive's had about 15 solicitors and lawyers over the
Mhm.
last 30 odd years. But um, I basically went back to basics and looked at it from an investigative perspective and
Mhm.
dismantled it and looked at all the evidence. I think some of the lawyers in the past were focused purely on the pathology, whereas I looked at
Mhm.
it from the whole, the alibi that he had. He actually wasn't there at the night of the alleged murder, and I just unpicked it all and sort of rebuilt it, looked at the evidence, and then represented a quite a detailed file. I think it was about 65 pages, and then
Mhm.
had meetings with the CCRC. I was able to make a final presentation to the three commissioners who took the decision to refer it to the CCRC. Basically repackaged it and argued it from different angles, and they clearly decided that there was reasonable grounds or real possibility that the Court of Appeal would consider his conviction back in 1989 to be unsafe. So that's a great result. But there's still a lot of work to be done. We're very fortunate that one of the leading barristers, Edward Henry KC, has volunteered to take the case forward. So we're now in that process. And in fact, I've been had an initial meeting with him, and I'm going to see him this week as well to start, giving him the facts because, although it's documented, there's a lot of detail, and I have to explain all the different facts, and then the grounds for appeal have to be developed and perfected, and then served on the Crown Prosecution Service, and then hopefully we'll get a date. So in the
Mhm.
meantime, the problem is Clive remains in prison. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to get him released on compassionate grounds, on bail. He's not going anywhere. He needs support, and we're looking at how we can get that support, but not within a prison environment. So that's the next challenge, because the parole board, the Ministry of Justice, they keep banging on back to the fact that, well, he's still a risk to the public, which is complete
Oh,
nonsense.
it's ridiculous, isn't it? And when you think of the amount of people that have been released recently with, terrible crimes and this and the other because they're clearing the jails, I mean, it's absurd to keep a man of his age and health inside.
Absolutely. I mean, he says to me that over the years he's not mixed with many people, which sometimes has been to his disadvantage because his dossier says that he doesn't mix. And he said, "Well, I've got nothing in common with the murderers and rapists and drug
Mhm.
dealers." I said, "Well, at the moment you're still a convicted murderer," and no, he recognises that, but he keeps himself to himself. He's been focused exclusively on his appeal and looking at the different angles and the documents which he's accrued over the years. So I'm confident. I was always confident we could get it over through the Criminal Cases Review Commission.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of criticism over the past, and there was lots of issues with previous rejections because most of this evidence has been known in one way or another for many years. So, and
Mhm.
we've got lots of experts that I don't claim any credit for that. That's been
Mhm.
gathered by others over the years. It's just how it's presented and looking at the big picture really of the
Mhm.
whole case. And try and dismantle all of it. So the grounds for appeal that he's been referred on are the pathology,
Mhm.
which is that there was no murder. As I said before, this will hopefully be known as the case where a man spent nearly 4 decades in prison for a crime that was never ever committed in the first place. But as I say, there's a long way to go. And then of course there's how does the state can compensate Clive
Absolutely.
for 30 to 40 years of imprisonment. What would he have been doing now? He's past his work life, but he was a transport contractor in
Mhm.
Africa with a successful business at the time. So all that's going to be looked at. But the priority now is, for me, is to help the advocate, the barrister, to
Mhm.
prepare the case for the Court of Appeal hearing, which could be anything from 6 to 9 to 12 months. I'm hoping
Really.
it'll be able to be raised up the profile because of his age in particular and his health. And in the meantime, try and get him out of prison where he can be supported in the community pending the appeal date.
Do you think this is going to be, when he is released, one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in UK legal history?
Absolutely, I'm sure it will be. In fact, there's a document written by the lifer governor
Mhm.
from one of the prisons back in 2000, I think it was, saying this could turn out to be one of the most infamous miscarriages of justice in British legal history. Now, he
Mhm.
said that 20 odd years ago, and I've got the
Yeah.
letter. And in fact, I was showing that to some people the other day. I said, "Look, this is what the man said then," and this was a chap responsible for his custody, for his detention, and we're seeing it play out now.
Mhm.
So I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will be. But again, it's if we come out of that Court of Appeal building in the Strand, it's not going to
Mhm.
be fist pumping. It's, well, how did this happen in the first place? How did we ever get to this situation? So I'll be calling for a statutory inquiry because there's lots of individuals in organizations who need to be held accountable for why this has been allowed to go on for so long. So, and it's a combination of poor police investigation, poor CPS decision making, poor Criminal Cases Review Commission, and in fact his defence team didn't do a particularly good job either. So there's lots of people that need
Mhm.
to be held to account once this matter is eventually, hopefully, satisfactorily resolved with Clive's convictions being quashed.
So, are many of the people involved in this case, are many of them still alive that can have some kind of retribution?
Well, I don't know. It's very difficult. I mean, the senior investigating officer from the police force concerned in the Metropolitan Police, nobody seems to know of her. It was a lady, detective chief superintendent at the time, and but no, I mean, all this will follow subsequently. Let's say the focus at the moment is preparing the evidence, but
Mhm.
there are a lot of people that need to explain right the way through into the parole board. Even his parole board dossier has got information which is inaccurate in there. So and all that contributes to his continuing detention. As I say, there's a battle I have to fight at the moment to hopefully get him out. But the authorities, the system kicks in, and people in the
Mhm.
system say no, and he'll have to stay there. I hope that won't be the case, but and then there's the Court of Appeal itself, and there's a lot of work to do. This isn't a simple case of new DNA being found. This is lots of experts from the UK and abroad who've said the man couldn't have died in the way it was described at the time, and that the pathology conducted by what is now a fairly well-known or famous pathologist was flawed. There were lots of things wrong with it, and the man didn't die from being murdered by a deliberate act. That's clear. And clearly, if the man wasn't murdered, that's the end of the case. But there are other peripheral things that need to be resolved as well. So that's why it's important that the grounds for appeal are as good as they can be.
So will Clive attend the hearing, or either remotely, or will he be allowed to be in court?
Yes, I mean he will be allowed to take part in the court hearing,
Mhm.
and whether that will be remotely because he's still detained, I hope that he'll be able to sit in the court with me, with the barrister who's presenting it, and
Mhm.
seeing it face to face. But that remains to be seen as to whether I can get him out, because
Mhm.
I can't see any grounds for keeping him in. The evidence that the parole board have put together and said he's not suitable for release is just laughable.
Well, what's his kind of mood at the moment?
He's
And
very
I
positive.
have to say,
Yeah.
what was his reaction when you told him that they were going to review this case again?
Well, I knew I was going to get the result on the Monday morning. The Criminal
Hmm.
Cases Commission had told me that they were going to tell me, and I'd made arrangements with the prison to do a surprise visit. So as soon as I got the good news, I hot-footed it to Leyhill, which is about 45 minutes away. Went in, and they brought him out to see me, and he looked very serious. He thought I'd got some good news. And before I had chance to say sit down, I thought I've got to tell him. I said, Clive, you've case has been referred, and he gave me the biggest bear hug I've ever had. And it was quite an emotional moment because Clive is not a sort of touchy-feely
No,
individual. He sort of
no.
keeps his emotions well boxed away. But he gave me a great hug, and I think that said it all.
That is absolutely wonderful. So, have you had lots of help? I know he's had like people like Terry Wilcock who's been helping. Have people helped you a lot, or have you had to take this all on your own shoulders?
Well, I mean, he's had a lot. I say a lot. He's had a lot of support
Mhm.
in terms of doing the hard yards of working through the papers and the documents. That's
Mhm.
been me. But there are others who've helped in the past that have helped me as well. Yes, I mean it's not a solo effort. I suppose I'd put it in rugby terms. I've sort of picked the ball up and dropped it over the line. But it's been, yeah, a lot of detail. It's something that's sort of taken up every day of some part of my day, looking at it and writing it and understanding it, and importantly understanding it, because I say I'm starting to brief the barrister who's going to have to
Mhm.
lead this in court,
Mhm.
and the solicitor that's supporting him. So going through all that, but I can talk it through. Apart from sort of checking on a few dates, I understand it now as well as Clive, which is good. But he's very good. But he is in his 80s, and he's
Mhm.
he's struggling a little bit now. But he's optimistic, and that's why I'm trying to get him out, because to say,
Mhm.
Clive, you've got another 9 months, 12 months in prison
Mhm.
waiting, and you're going to do a video link would be grossly unfair, and there's no grounds whatsoever to keep him in. So that's my battle. The battle to get him there has been achieved. We've got to do it. Obviously, I'm confident we've got one of the leading barristers in the country who represented Andrew Malkinson, and also a number of the post office families and individuals.
Mm.
Post Office Horizon inquiry. So we've got the top man leading, but and again, it's a team effort, making sure the correct information is put forward, and then it's for the appeal court to make their decision. So whether
That,
the prosecution service will contest it remains to be seen, but we'll know about that once we've got our grounds for appealing. So it's exciting times, and
yes.
if we can get Clive to the Court of Appeal and get him there physically and walking out at the end, and then it's about, well, what happens next? I know he wants to go and see his family that he hasn't
Mhm.
seen for over 30 years, but he wants to see them as an exonerated, as an innocent man. And I'm confident that we, with the support we've got and the barrister we've got and the evidence that we've got, that we will achieve that.
Yeah, there's a major film there. If he gets out, I mean, what a testament to courage and determination. I mean, it's astonishing, and of course, it's been featured quite a bit with the Daily Mail, hasn't it?
Yes, the Mail have done a really good job following it, and
Hmm.
Stephen Wright, the associate editor, I've known him since he was the crime one of the crime reporters back 25 or so years ago when I was still in the police. So I knew he would be a good man, and the Mail have supported covering the story, so that they've helped keep the profile up, and clearly, if and when he gets acquitted or his convictions get quashed, then they'll do a big piece on it as well. I'm already getting documentary makers talking to me about covering the case, and so that's looking good as well. But I say the priority is
Yeah.
getting out of prison whilst the Court of Appeal hearing is pending. That would be a great result. So that's my challenge at the moment.
I just can't see after all this time how it cannot work out for Clive. I mean, he's paid his dues. I mean, he really has, and it would be just a travesty if he doesn't come out.
Absolutely. I mean, another challenge is because he's a very unique situation. I've been speaking, well, I've been chasing for months the Department for Work and Pensions to say, if and when he's released, whether that's now pending the Court of Appeal or ultimately, um, you know, how was he going to support himself? He didn't pay
Yeah.
national insurance contributions. He was passing through London. And what are his entitlements? I've got documents on my desk that I need to go through with Clive for his sort of over 80 pension, but he didn't fit any of their policy areas. And I said, look, we need to know to build support for his case that he can live when he comes out. He's got a British passport. He was born in Rhodesia, former of Rhodesia, and he has got a British passport, long expired, I must say. So there's no chance of him fleeing the country on a plane if he's allowed out. But and anyway, they've come back to me and they've come up with various things that he's entitled to. I just need to go through the forms. There's not much to put on them because it's all zero apart from his basic details. He's no money, he's no savings. He's got absolutely zero. But it did cause the policymakers within the deep Department for Work and Pensions some headaches. I said, look, you can't release if the man's released, which has nothing to do with the DWP. He needs money. He needs to be supported. You've got to come up with a solution, whether it's a unique solution. And anyway, they've come up with that, so he will be entitled to claim for his over 80s pension, pension credits, and there's other benefits that he may be entitled to. But I've got to go through that with Clive and get those in. In fact, I'm speaking for DWP shortly after we finish the podcast today, so to get a bit of clarity. But making progress on a number of different fronts, I think is the best way to describe it.
Well, it's fantastic. I would say some hefty compensation, wouldn't you? I mean, it's a whole life. It's a whole life just gone for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure other people will tell you it's not an automatic. If somebody gets their convictions quashed, it's not a simple case of the government saying, "Yes, here we're sorry. Here's a bag of cash.
Hmm.
Go and enjoy the rest of your life." Again, that's another struggle, but it's one
Hmm.
that we can't focus on at the moment. But that
No,
will
of course not.
be coming down the line. But yeah, it's very, very difficult. And as I say, I'm sure, I know for other people that have been wrongly convicted who have had to struggle or even just had
Mhm.
their applications rejected. But as I say, that's something we'll need to look at when we get to that position.
Well, I think on everybody's behalf, they'd want to say what a fantastic job you're doing, and the people around you. You know, I know he's had sort of friends that have supported him that we've spoken to, and also the people who arranged these interviews and everything. So you've done an amazing job. How are you feeling personally about it? Are you sort of happy? How difficult has it been for you? Has it put emotional strain on you?
It's been a long time, very frustrating at times dealing with the Criminal Cases Review Commission. And I
Hmm.
know they have about 1,600 applications a year.
Hmm.
And the top leadership's left. Dame Vera Baird's taken over as the interim chair, and I'm confident that she will be making a difference because Clive is one of many whose cases have been rejected over the years. So there's again, hopefully the CCRC will. It needs to be restructured, reformed, and sort of represented to do what it's supposed to do, and that's to deal with miscarriage of justice cases, investigate them, and send those where there's a real possibility of the convictions being quashed to the Court of Appeal. Their success rate is, as over the years, has been abysmal. I gave written evidence about Clive's situation to the Justice Committee, and the chair has been replaced on an interim basis. The chief exec has resigned, but it's about changing the whole culture and getting the people there that do these reviews, and they do have a huge workload to understand what a miscarriage of justice actually looks like, and having the inquisitive nature and the inquiring mind and the knowledge of how the forensic science world operates, not just around DNA, which is one of the areas that they were looking at, but it needs to be completely restructured and come up in a different form if these cases are going to be sped up, and more people that deserve to be acquitted or deserve to have their convictions squashed do get their convictions thrown out.
Fantastic. Now, if anybody wants to support Clive Freeman, is there, or where would they go to read about him, or can they write to him or yourself? Just give us some detail of that.
There is a website, a free Clive Freeman website. In fact, there's a song as well. Someone's actually written a song about it. I'm not sure if that's on the website. That was written by somebody from South Africa, which is actually quite catchy. And
Mhm.
but in terms of the website's got information on, and people can write to me. I see him several times a month, and I speak to him probably every other day. He's ringing up. It's a one way. You can't ring into the prison, but he can
Mhm.
he can ring up. I think he gets about £4 a week. That's his
Mhm.
money that he gets, and he spends all that on telephone calls, sort of ringing out. But yes, there's, I say, information on the website, or people can write to me, and I can pass messages on. I can give you my email address. You can pop that on there, and people
Mhm.
can email me on that basis. But in terms of support, Clive, everything's been done for Clive has been free, pro bono, as they call it
Mhm.
in legal terms. So everybody's given up their time. He won't accept any money or gifts or
Mhm.
anything like that. He's wearing. We got him a new pair of trainers, and he's still wearing ones that were handed down years ago with their sort of falling apart, literally. But he won't accept any charity or anything like that. He's got, he upholds his personal standards and sticks by them resolutely.
He's amazing. What a sort of proud, strong-willed man. Well, look, Tony, been fantastic speaking to you, and we really wish you the greatest of success with this Clive Freeman episode. And yeah, we wish Clive Freeman all the best. So thank you so much, Tony, for joining me today.
Thank you, Liam. Thanks very much.